George Bernard Shaw eulogizes Albert Einstein. Napoleon and other great men were makers of empires, but these 8 men whom I am about to mention were makers of universes, and their hands were not stained with the blood of their fellow men. I go back 2,500 years, and how many can I count in that period? I can count them on the fingers of my 2 hands. Pythagoras, Ptolemy, Kepler, Copernicus, Aristotle, Galileo, Newton, and Einstein, and I still have 2 fingers left vacant. Even among those 8 men I must make a distinction. I have called them makers of the universe, but some of them were only repairers. Newton made a universe which lasted for 300 years. Einstein has made a universe which I suppose you want me to say will never stop, but I don't know how long it'll last. These great men, they have been the makers of one side of humanity, which has 2 sides. We call the one side religion, and we call the other science. Religion is always right. Religion protects us against that great problem which we all must face. Science is always wrong. It is the very artifice of men. Science can never solve one problem without raising 10 more problems. What have all those great men been doing? Each in turn claimed the other was wrong. And now you are expecting me to say that Einstein proved that Newton was wrong. But you can forget that when science reached Newton, science came up against that extraordinary Englishman. That had never happened to it before. Newton lent a power so extraordinary that if I were speaking 15 years ago, as I am old enough to have done, I would have said that he had the greatest mind that ever man was endowed with. Combine the light of that wonderful mind with credulity, with superstition. He knew his people. He knew his language. He knew his own folk. He knew a lot of things. He knew that an honest bargain was a square deal, and an honest man was one who gave a square deal. He knew his universe. He knew that it consisted of heavenly bodies that were in motion, and he also knew that one thing you cannot do to anything whatsoever is to make it move in a straight line. In other words, motion will not go in a straight line. Mere fact will never stop an Englishman. Newton invented a straight line, and that was the law of gravitation. When he had invented this, he had created a universe which was wonderful in itself. When applying his wonderful genius, when he had completed a book of that universe, what sort of book was it? It was a book which told you the station of all the heavenly bodies, showed the rate at which they were traveling, showed the exact hour at which they would arrive at such and such a point to make an eclipse. It was not a magical, marvelous thing. It was a matter-of-fact thing. For 300 years we believed that Newtonian universe, as I suppose no system has been believed in before. I knew I was educated in it, and I was brought up to believe in it firmly. Then a young professor came along. He said a lot of things, and we called him a blasphemer. He claimed Newton's theory of the apple was wrong. He said, Newton did not know what happened to the apple, and I can prove this when the next eclipse comes. We said, the next thing you'll be doing is questioning the law of gravitation. The young professor said, no, I mean no harm to the law of gravitation, but for my part, I can go without it. What do you mean, go without it? He said, I can tell you about that afterward. The world is not a rectilinear world, it is a curvilinear world. The heavenly body go in curves, because that is the natural way for them to go, and so the whole Newtonian universe crumpled up and was succeeded by the Einstein universe. Here in England, he is a wonderful man. This man is not challenging the fact of science, he is challenging the action of science. Not only is he challenging the action of science, but the action of science has surrendered to his challenge. Now, ladies and gentlemen, are you ready for the toast? I drink to the greatest of our contemporaries, Einstein.